Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Chase, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of Automation Services, Inc. Thank you for joining us today for IDEA versus Excel. Our presenter is Scott Smith. He's our sales engineer with Automation. In today's webcast, Scott's going to show us some very basic comparisons of IDEA and Excel for tasks like sampling, joins, searches, and calculating values. This webcast is worth 1 hour of NASBA certified CPE. In order to receive the CPE credit, you must be logged in for the entire hour, answer all 3 polling questions, and complete a brief evaluation at the end of the webcast. Just note that we are recording this session. The session slides and the recording will be sent out as soon as possible. We have to make sure that all the qualifying attendees receive their CPEs within a week. If you do have any questions, please make sure to type them into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the webcast. So welcome, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Scott. Thank you for joining us.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of time here to show you a little bit about IDEA and compare that just a little bit to Excel. There is no doubt in my mind that there are people that are on the line out there that have way more experience using Excel, or at least current experience using Excel, than I do. So I'm not going to try to focus on anything that I call rocket surgery. This is going to be stuff that, by and large, if I do a presentation, and I do dozens of them throughout a month, dozens and dozens to help out our sales staff here, there is not a time goes by that I don't get asked 3, 4, or 5 of these comparisons. Well, I use this in Excel. How can I do it easier in IDEA? I have to do this, and I'm doing Excel right now, but it's just a pain. So what we're going to try to do is show some of those things that we can do in IDEA that are typically done and presented to prospective IDEA users as well as current IDEA users in IDEA. So let me go to the next slide here. So what we're going to cover today is how do you sample. In IDEA, it's fairly straightforward. There are methods to do it in Excel. None of them are really nice. There are some applets that can be downloaded to make it a little bit nicer. But some of the cool things in IDEA are things such as attribute sampling, classical variable sample, monetary unit sampling, and it's all built in. That's the cool thing about IDEA, is it's all in one tidy package. The next thing that I get to ask to do every time I do a presentation is joining databases. In IDEA, there's a couple methodologies. You can join, which is 2 databases or 2 imported files, and then there's another way to do multiple, up to 7 databases all at the same time. We're not going to focus on that. We're going to do a simple join and show you how you can contrast that to how you do it in Excel, which would be typically a VLOOKUP. From a database point of view, you have to have a key value. You have to have a value that you can match together from one data set to the other in order to be able to join those guys together and get a more robust look at the data. VLOOKUP is awesome, but it has a little bit of inherent weaknesses when compared to how simple it is and how robust it is in IDEA. Next, we're going to do searching. IDEA has a wide variety of searching capabilities on the menu item, on the toolbar. You can do Boolean, you can do proximity, you can do wildcard searches. We're going to focus on wildcard. Remember back in the day where you did an asterisk and a before and after of a word, and that would mean any letter combination before and after the specific combination that you're looking for? Well, one of the ways that people get around having to use a VLOOKUP for a specific function in Excel is to nest some functions. Now you can do this in IDEA also, but in Excel it's a little crunchy because you have to reference columns, you have to reference rows, you have to reference cells. It just makes it difficult. So we're going to nest the index and the match function in Excel to look up a specific row of data. When in IDEA, we're going to look for all of the values that match. Just give us a way bigger record set. And then something that's just super simple. You know, when you import some data into IDEA and you go over there to the right-hand side and you click on Field Statistics, it just summarizes and control totals and gives you all kinds of statistical information by default. With Excel, each one of those items are doable, but it's an individual item. So if you want to control total or you want to summarize or standard deviation or bell curve, you do each one of those functions separately for every column in the data set. With IDEA, import your data, click a button, All of it's done by default. Just way cooler, way faster, way more powerful. And then the last thing we're going to attempt to do is summarizing data. You can summarize on up to 8 columns within IDEA. And we have clients that will import hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rows of data and do summarization so they get a much more tight record set to maybe join to another record set. Inside of Excel, there is a feature called a subtotal. And it kind of does the same thing. It's just not as wide as IDEA. I can only subtotal on a single column. I can summarize a bunch of values up, but only one column. Well, what if I want the MCC code as well as the last 4 digits of the credit card? Well, you can't do that in Excel. You have to do it in multiple steps, maybe multiple files, and an idea is just choose up to 8 different columns, summarize that data up, and get a nice record set built for you. All right, so we're going to jump on in. And the first thing we're going to attempt is sampling. And while we're doing this, I'm going to be pulling IDEA as well as Excel up and show you how you're going to do each one. With IDEA, attribute sampling. I need to determine a population, my tolerable deviation rate, expected deviation rate, and assign a confidence level to control that beta risk. And IDEA will automatically calculate you a sample using PPS algorithms, or population proportional to size. Now, there are downloaded applets that you can install in your Excel instance to be able to do sampling, but when I get asked to do it online, 99% of the time, people are doing a very judgmental sample by applying a random function. And I actually modified it just a tad. I said what I wanted to do is create a random number between 0 and 1, and anything that's less than 0.01, put a false or a true in there. Okay, so based on that function, it's going to make a value for me. So let me go ahead and pop Excel up and show you how you're going to do that. All right, I've got a bunch of sample data sets here. This is a P-card data set. There's a sample of the P-cards, and I'm actually going to use this one to get, I'm going to create a sample based on this record set. And if I go all the way down to the end of this data set, let me see, you see there's 14,373 records. What would you do in Excel, or what methodology would you use in order to decide how many records is a valid sample, and then how do you know if that's within a specific confidence, or the records selected will achieve a specific confidence level? Again, external apps that can be added. Now here's the method that we're going to use. Okay, first of all, I'm going to create a couple of blank columns. Right click, insert a column. We'll call it the sample. I'm going to right click, insert another column, and this, I'm just going to call it test to make it easy on myself. So the first thing, and the reason I'm doing this is because the random function, as cool as it is, when you refresh the sheet, it recalculates the value, so you can never resample the data based on the original sample that you took. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an equal random and close it off. Okay. Now you can always type in your function, click the function button, and it's going to give you a little dialog box, make it somewhat easier. But what I want to do is I want to say less than, oh, what's a good sample size? 0.1. If I do that, my value is evaluated. The number is less than 0.1, so I get a false, or it's greater than 0.1, so I get a false. Now what I want to do is propagate that equation through every record in the data set. So put your mouse on the little box, double click, copies it down to the last record. Now you can see it's mostly false because I have a very low threshold here. But what we want to do is copy those. Did you see that? It automatically refreshed it when I told it to select that column. So we're going to copy those cells, Control C. I'm going to put my mouse in this column, and I'm going to paste. I want to paste the values, because if I just do a paste, it's going to paste the formula, and then it's going to re-update my data. So paste the values. This column refreshed itself, changed the values. We're done with it. We don't care anymore. I'm going to delete him. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip over and filter. Okay, so based on filtering, I can say I want to choose only the true values. Okay, so there. Now I've filtered the data to just the true. So these are the guys that are my random less than 0.1. This is true. So let's go ahead. Collect all the data. Control Shift and hit the arrow button. It goes to the end of the data. Control Shift and the down arrow goes to the bottom of the data, and I can Control C and copy it. So you see the process here? This is quite arduous. We're going to insert another sheet, and I'm going to rename it Sample 2 and put my mouse right here, and I'm going to copy my data. All right, so there's my sample. If I look at it, out of my 14,000 and some odd records, if I go Control End and I go down 1,460 records, and that's at a 0.1% of the data set. So that's an unusable sample. I can't go through this many data points. I could further that down. I could go back and resample and say a 0.0001 and maybe get down, but I still don't have any attributes to wrap around that particular sample. So let me drag this guy out of the way. I'm going to open up IDEA, and we're going to do the same thing. I've got P-card data. There's my, if I look at it, you can see down at the very bottom, where did it go? That's a small one. I'm going to look at the full data set. So again, 14,372 records, same data set that was in Excel. To be able to do that sample inside of IDEA and kind of control it a lot better, I'm going to go to the Analysis tab, and I'm going to tell IDEA to help me decide on what is a proper sample for this many records using PPS sampling methodologies. So simply put in the total number of records that you're sampling from, 14,732. Tolerable deviation rate. Now this is going to be something that is probably determined by the type of data, the industry that you're in, and the characteristics of the data that you're sampling. For today's sample, we're going to do a 10% tolerable deviation rate, and we're going to pick and choose. I want 1% expected deviation rate in this P-card information, but I need to achieve, to control the beta risk, 95% confidence level. And lastly, all you do is tell it to compute, and IDEA says to achieve these parameters, I choose 46 records. I would print this off to document my process. This is something Excel does not do for you. And now I've got a confidence level, I've got expected and tolerable deviation rate if no more than one deviation is observed in this sample. I can be 95% confident that I'm not more than 10% of tolerable deviation rate. These are things that Excel don't do for you. So I'm going to close this out and jump right back up to my data and take a random sample with 46 records. That's a much more manageable sample. Okay. IDEA created a random seed, and this seed is held in the history, so should I need to resample, maybe my sample does not pass, I need to go back and resample and add another 5 records to it. The seed is held in the memory where I can resample the data in the original record order, get the original 46 plus an additional 5. Random sample of P-card, click OK, and IDEA very quickly jumps down, makes you a child record set called random sample of P-card, and you've got a P-card sample that's more manageable. At this point, I would go and look at the history, and there's the sample seed. So should you need to resample it, everything is documented, your history, your paper trail, the whole works. Obviously, you guys know this if you're using IDEA. All right, so let me close this out. And hopefully if there's any questions, they'll show up in the chat box, and at the end of the day, we'll be able to get to them, and I should be able to handle those quite nicely. Close IDEA down, move this guy over. All right, so the next thing we're going to try to take a look at is a polling question. And I'm going to turn that over to Kelly.
Okay, we have launched the first polling question. It's pretty easy, guys. Just select IDEA in the options below, please. We'll give everyone a moment to get their votes in. And Scott, we do have one question. I'll wait for you when you're ready. Just let me know.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want me to go ahead and tell you now? Okay, we've got a
Sure.
question from Gabriella Turner. She says,
Hmm.
I have a spreadsheet that has a column with dates on it, and I noticed that when I try to append or join the database, it somehow changes the date format in the column. Do you have any tips on how to fix it or any other tips for date values in IDEA?
Now this is a date column in Excel. When you import it into IDEA, it changes the date. If
Doesn't
that's the
spec
case, go ahead.
She doesn't specify here, but let me see if I can get her to respond to us.
Okay.
Yes, she's responding yes.
Okay, so it says it's a date in Excel, but when it comes into IDEA, it's got an odd format. There are strange date formats inside of Excel that when they're imported into IDEA, the best place to go is, number one, the help desk. They are wizards at being able to figure that stuff out. Number two, if you've got IDEA 10, there's a forum in there that has a ton of pre-developed equations and scripts that you can use to apply to dates that will clean them up. That's a huge issue. People get weird dates all the time. There's already a whole library of equations that have been developed to be able to clean up, dates parsed by slashes and, the years first and the days second and the months third and just weird stuff that happens. More than likely, it's just because the date is formatted oddly in Excel, and IDEA is not quite able to recognize it as it comes in. But once it's in, you should be able to apply one of those formulas from the library or from IDEA's um, forums to be able to clean that data up. But by all means, get a hold of the help desk, and they can help you work on that.
Great, thanks, Scott. And
Hopefully that helps.
that's a great answer. We've got about 94% voted. Just a reminder, if you need CPE for this hour, we need you to answer all three of the polling questions. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this poll now, Scott. You can take over.
Okay. All right, let's see. There we go. The next thing we get asked all the time using IDEA is I get data from this database, and then I get another bit of the data from this ERP system, and then somebody sends me a PDF, and I get some of it there, and then I get an Excel spreadsheet, and I have to join all of those guys together. There are ways to do that in IDEA that's just super easy. Joining databases, doing Access or SQL Server type joins of data, which makes it very cool because then you're referencing columns by name. With Excel, I want you to look over here. It says VLOOKUP. That's a way to do a join. You're going to match on a key value from one data set to another, pull the data from possibly another worksheet into the first worksheet, but look at how ugly that is right there. In order to add the description for each one of the MCC codes, I had to be able to write that code, reference another sheet in the workbook. With IDEA, I just select my primary, my secondary, and match the two data sets together on a key value. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to attempt this live, not Memorex, in Excel. Okay, so here's my original. So I need to turn my my filter off. Give me a second to clean the data back up. We're going to go to filter, and we're going to turn it all off. All right, so we're back to look into the whole darn thing. I got my code over here. I've got my last four digits, and my MCC code, and the descriptor, or the description in here. Okay, so now how did I get that description in Excel? See that VLOOKUP right there? What you do is, I'm going to do it one more time just to show you how this process goes. I'm going to insert a copy. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to insert a column. And it takes a second to move it over because there's 14,000 rows. Now, just imagine if there was 200,000 rows, the time that it would be. Let's call this description 2. Just because we're going to mimic this over here and kind of show you how I did the work. Okay, again, put your mouse in the first column of the data. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is start. You always start equations in Excel with an equal VLOOKUP. Okay, and when you select it, it kind of cements it into the box. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use their help, kind of, sort of. It gives you the parameters that you need to be able to put in place, but what I want to do is hit the function button. It opens up a little argument box. Now ultimately I'm going to take the description from another sheet that I downloaded from Chase that has the descriptor number, or the code number, and a description. So the lookup value is, what am I going to use? What's my key value? Okay, so that's my key value right there. In that column is the key value that I'm going to use to touch the other database. The array that I'm going to look into or use as the description holding tank is on another sheet. So click on the other sheet and highlight the data. And I need to move all the way up to the top. And then if you do Control Shift and a down arrow, it'll pull in all of the data for you and give you the complete array. Okay, those are words that I used to use back when I was a programmer: arrays and references and this, that, and the other. Nobody likes that stuff anymore. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is the column that you're going to reference. Okay, and the column that I'm going to reference in this particular data set, you've got to understand, what am I looking for? Okay, am I looking for column number 1 or column 2 in the array that I just defined? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say number 1, because I'm not sure. Okay, and then the last thing is, they call it a range lookup, but basically what it is it's a logical value. True means it's going to be kind of a fuzzy match, kind of sort of similar, and false means it's an exact match. So I'm going to put false in there and hit enter. Okay, I chose the wrong column in my array. I wanted column 2. So I'm referencing column 1, but I want to pull over column 2. All right, so let's go back in here. Click on your value, take that one right there, and let's make this a number 2 and run it through the data set again, and there we go. So now what it's doing is it's joining the two data sets from this data to this data, where this value is the same. It is supplying the value. Now this is fine and dandy, but you notice there are some inherent issues with VLOOKUPs. Okay, number 1, if these two columns were swapped, I could not do this VLOOKUP, because VLOOKUP references the left-hand column. So if I was looking for the code and it was sitting over here, I would have to manipulate my data, change it all up to get it to work the way that it's supposed to. I've heard there's some tricks and workarounds, but that's just no fun. So what I'm going to do is, again, click on the button, get my little square there, double click on it, and it's going to copy that down. So I just did a join between one sheet in the data set and another. That's fine and dandy, but I can only do one value at a time. Okay, so what if I wanted to have the description and there was 3 or 4 more other columns? I'd have to do a second lookup and a third VLOOKUP and a fourth VLOOKUP. That gets to be a pain. And what if I didn't get that value right there, or I overtype it and delete it? Then my data's gone. Okay, good data set, matches up, looks like I did it okay. But what we're going to do now is we're going to close this guy down, and I'm going to open IDEA back up, and I'm going to show you how to do the same darn thing in IDEA. And hopefully it's much simpler. Okay, so now I've got my codes here, and I'm going to tab those on top of each other because I like to look at both sheets at the same time. I've got my MC code right there. I've got my MC code right there. So in order to do a join in IDEA, I can do a join or the visual connector. Visual connector lets you join from 1 to 7 databases. Join is 1 table to 1 table. Okay, 1 to many. Primary data set, select your secondary data set. It's one of your databases that you have imported. I'm going to join it to the codes. That's what I'm going to look into for my value. I'm going to give this a name, P-cards with description. Oops. Because IDEA makes a actual database for you to document your process. And then what you need to do is say, you know what? I'm really only interested in the description, but I could put the code. Unlike in Excel, I can have multiple data points from both data sets showing up in a single row, which is way more handy. Okay, and then lastly, you just have to match it. I don't have to be calling out columns and cells and whatnot. I just choose the code and choose the MCC. MCC is going to join to code. Click OK, and then tell it how you want the data set. For this one, I've got 14,000 records plus up here and only 800 plus down here, but I know there's a bunch of 3050s, a bunch of each one of those, so I want them to propagate through the data set, and every time there's a match, give me the new value. Click OK, and we'll scroll down here. There's my description. And in another cool thing in IDEA, if I highlight a column by clicking on the header, I can left-click and drag it without messing up my data and just put it next door to my MCC code. And I think just to get it back in order, I would go to data and index this guy on the last 4 digits in ascending order. And there we go. So there's the difference between doing a join in IDEA and a join in Excel. I had to understand VLOOKUP function syntax, make sure that I got it right, and believe me, I've done it wrong more than I've done it right. And on top of that, IDEA documents the process for me, so everything that I've done can be put into working papers. I just print that guy out, put it into the working papers app, and document my process. All right, so there's the second one we tried to look at. We are going to pull up our PowerPoint one more time and go to the next thing here, if I can figure it. There we go. Searching. Now this one is a tricky one. A lot of times people will search through data using a VLOOKUP because it's fairly efficient unless you get to large record sets. If you get 10,000, 20, 100, 200, 500,000 records in an Excel spreadsheet, it slows to a crawl. And a VLOOKUP will really become inefficient. A workaround for that is what they call nesting of functions. Again, more programming terms. People don't like programming terms, but you got to do it. And what you're going to do is you're going to nest an index on top of a match. So I'm going to index. What an index function does in Excel, it says, give me the reference or the value for that cell right there. And I'm going to use that reference to give me the value in another cell based on a lot of data. It's way too messy. With IDEA, I can literally say, you know what, I'm looking through some P-card data. I know that we're not supposed to have any Jack Daniels or Jim Beam or anything, so I can do a search using wildcards or Booleans or even close proximities and have it search through multiple columns or even multiple databases and create me a database with all of the occurrences. Okay, but I'm going to show you a slick little utility that you can use in Excel that's just a royal pain in the backside. Okay, so let me switch over and pull Excel back up here. And I'm going to jump to this inventory data set. Okay, so if I was going to do a lookup or a search through this data set, there's a few ways that you can do that. You can summarize, you can group, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. But in a search, what I want to do is look for a specific value or specific values and have those records displayed to me all at one time. Here's one method to do that. I'm going to put my mouse right here and I'm going to actually create what's called a drop down in Excel. Okay, so I'm going to key on this description category right here. All right, so put my mouse right there. Actually do right here, we'll call it description. Put my mouse right here and go over to the data tab and use this data validation tool because I'm going to nest a couple of values and I want to be able to quickly pick out values. Data validation. We're going to make a list. And then the source for the list is actually going to be right here. Okay, so all of those values. And you notice it referenced it with $signs. You need to look that up. There's going to be exclamation points or $signs. They mean different things as related to a cell within a record set or an array. No need to go into that right now. But what we're going to do is use that and say OK. And now if I go back up here and look, I've just told Excel to use this column, and then I can choose those out of that particular cell. Okay, so there's a way to look up a value. But what about jumping to the specific record, or maybe looking for specific values within that record? So what we're going to do now is, just for fun, I'm going to do the category. Okay, so for this particular piece of information, I'm going to do a nested index match search. Okay, so right here we do equals index. Now these are separate functions, and you need to know the particulars that each one of those functions actually reference. This one does an array or a reference to an array. Again, more programming stuff. The data set that I want to search through based on this value right here is this guy right here, all of this information. So I'm going to put my mouse there. I'm going to go across by Control-Shift and Control-Shift down, and it puts my array values in it for me. And I think I may have chose one too many. We'll fix that if we have to. Okay, and now follow the pattern. Again, very crunchy here. Follow the pattern. I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to nest the match, because based on the value, I want to match to a record in another piece of data. So now I just start my second function, open it up, and I got a whole new set of parameters to put in there. Okay, so the first one is the lookup value. All right, the lookup value we've already established. It's this one right here. Okay, so now I'm saying use an index to look up this value and match that value, and I'm going to choose which piece of information out of this big chunk of data that I want to display. Okay, so the next parameter is a comma. So what do we want to do? If we're going to do the category, we need to go from here all the way down and select that data. Put a comma. And again, another one of these, less than, exact match, greater than. I want an exact match, put a 0. And then you're closing off the match function. But there's one more parameter needed for the actual, the index function. So you have to put a comma. And what column inside of the index or the array is the category? What's the second column? Okay, so put a 2 there. Close off the index. Oops. Close off the index. And hopefully that's not going to work. See, this is the inherent issue that you have with doing these things. It just gets crunchy. Okay, so we're going to do that. And we're going to paste in the good information, and this time it liked it. So if I'm on ravioli and I look at my category, it is a snack. And this is a way to look it up. But what if I wanted to see all of the ravioli or all of the quart swatches? With this methodology, I can choose one at a time. Okay, and we can add different metrics down here. Maybe I wanted the last sale price too for a category and a piece of information. So I would do the same darn thing, but the difference is that it references a different column down here, the last sales price. When I change my value, let's go back all the way up, Cajun. Now you can see I'm able to pull out of this big array specific pieces of information. Now, very useful. But look at those functions, or look at those nested functions that I had to be able to create in order to get the data. Not that friendly. Okay, let's do the same darn thing in Excel, in IDEA, and see where we get. So I'm going to drop this out of the way. I'm going to pull IDEA back up. And now we're going to go to the search. On the data tab, there is a search, and we'll just use the P cards with description, and just for fun, we'll pull out a couple of words in various columns and show what it does. So with IDEA, you get dialog boxes that are very descriptive, okay? And it does all of those formula creations that you were seeing me type manually. It does that behind the scenes. It's formatted properly for you by default. You're not going to get the wrong answer. You're not going to misform the equation. So I'm going to actually focus on what's called wildcard searches. If you click on that, I don't know if any of you guys remember back in the day, you could do an asterisk, and that would mean multiple characters. So if I wanted automation, I could do asterisk, asterisk, M-A-U-T-I-O-N. And anything with M-A-U-T-I-O-N would show up in the search, okay? So based on that, if I wanted business, I would do asterisk, business, asterisk. That means any description that has the word business in it is going to be returned for me. Okay, and let's see, let's do one more, because we can go and use what's called Boolean searches. These are and or not. So I can say I want this and that, or this or that. You can get very creative in this. So we're going to say business, excuse me, or parts. Okay, so I've got multiple pieces of information that I'm going to search for and return, and I can choose to actually make a database out of this stuff so I can do further analytics on a specific subset of the data. If I don't want to, it'll create a result down here with hyperlinks so I can look at specific rows within my data set very quickly. Now that all we have to do is tell it which row or which column we want to actually search through. Okay, so I've got the description down here somewhere. Let me item description. Well, let's do that too. Item description, and probably way down here because I didn't. There it is, the description. So I'm actually going to search through 2 columns. If I wanted to, I could click on that and actually incorporate a second, third, fourth database and search multiple databases all in one swoop. If I want to create that database, it's going to be test, and then it's going to prefix that with, or suffix that with a name for the database and create me a subset of data over here. So put your parameters in there, and or not. Tell it which databases, which columns within the databases you want to search. Click OK, and you can see right there, IDEA has made me a database. And I need to get back to it here. Hang on a second. There we go. 799 records. So anytime I had the word business, or I had the word part or parts, or anything that came close to parts, I got a drill down. And do that, it'll jump right to the record. Over here is the database with all of the records incorporated into one data set. So searching in Excel, multiple ways to do it. I showed you one method to be able to kind of quickly drill, not too quickly, but to go to a single record set. I've been told, I've never done it, that there's ways inside of those functions to use the wildcards like the asterisks or the question marks or whatnot. It's impractical. With IDEA, it's very simple to do all of that type of analysis and make it very quick. All right, so now we've done a couple of things that have been fairly comprehensive in IDEA, and I believe the next thing that we're going to do is another polling question.
You are correct, Scott. We'll launch that polling question. Again, it's another really tricky one. Please select Help Desk from the options available. Scott, we do have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Can we show real quick again how to search through multiple databases?
Absolutely. That's a good one. Okay, so let me go and do this right here. I've got my data set open, P-cards with descriptions. If I go to search,
I'm going to close this poll so everybody can see your screen.
Oh, okay. No. Wait until it's done. I'm sorry. I'll wait until we get back online. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I just think that it interferes with the ability for the clients to see your screen. So we've almost got everyone voted. We'll give them another 5 seconds or so. Please make sure you answer the question if you need CPE credit for this. We'll go ahead and close the poll question now. Scott, you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, we're good to go. All right, so you're seeing my screen again here. The question was searching multiple databases. It's kind of cool. So we're gonna make sure that this happens right here. We've got school, and I know in the other database there's snacks. I know that that's there. So let's go ahead and open up the search database again, or excuse me, the search dialog. Now this one we're going to do asterisk school, asterisk. That means anything with a sentence that has the letters S-C-H-O-O-L, or asterisk snack. Same thing. Snacks, snack size, I want a snack. Anything with this string of letters in it is going to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to say in the P cards with description, we're going to search through the description column. I'm going to add another database to it and say, you know what, we're going to search through the inventory file also. So click the button right here. The dialog will open up, let you choose what database you want to add to your search criteria. Expand that out a little bit and say in the description over here, I want to search also. So now I'm looking 2 databases, 2 different columns. I click OK. I get another data set. And let me get down here and open that guy up. Okay, so now we've got stores, school supply, there's school. And let's keep on going down. And this time, remember, I did not click the button to have it make me a database, only a view. But if I go on down here, I should be able to find snack, unless I did it wrong. Yep, I must have did something sideways here. Let's try it again. Search. Go to the description. Maybe I looked at the wrong. Hang on one second. Let me open up this database to make sure. In the description. Oh, I should have done category. That's why. So let's do it again. Search, inventory, category. We're going to look for snack. Or we're going to look for school. And we're going to look for school in a different database. Okay, click on the button, choose the database that you're interested in, go down and find it in your list, tell it which item you want to search through. That is the description. Let me find it. There's a lot of columns in there. Item description in this database. Click OK. And there we go. So if you choose your data sets wisely, it's going to actually show you which columns that you're choosing from. And on this particular database, item description, I chose a data set that didn't have, I had not joined my databases together, so it didn't have the description of it, school. Hopefully that answers the question. But when you choose a search box, the little ellipse button up there allows you to add another database to the search list, and then you can choose any or all of the columns and then put a list of and or not proximities or wildcard parameters in there to search for.
And Scott,
okay, what was the second question? Yep.
I'd like to interrupt just for a second. We do have another question, and it's on the wildcard search, so it's a good time to go ahead and talk about it. If you could go ahead and explain the wildcard search parameters, specifically what the asterisk will do.
Okay, let me open up the search and open this box up a little bit. This is a great way to get all of the information. So when I click on search and I choose wildcards, this harkens back to the DOS days, okay? I remember it. Some people don't, but if you do a wildcard search, there's a few of them. Single wildcard is a question mark. So if I want right here, woman, W-O-M question mark N, we'll get woman, woman, and W-O-M 9N. Anything, any character in that location is going to be pulled back as a match, okay? That's a question mark. Now there's also a multiple character wildcard, which is the asterisk. That's the one I'm using. I'm saying I want the word snack in a sentence. So a T asterisk T will get text, target. Anything with a T and a T, if you put work, it's going to be work, worked, working, workhorse, anything. That's a multiple character wildcard. So if I want a sentence with the word Scott in it, I do asterisk, Scott, asterisk. So any sentence that has SCOTT is going to be returned as a match. Does that make sense? And this is a great place to look. Just go here and give it a shot. And there's also, if you hit the help button, it'll dig down a little bit deeper and give you examples.
And Scott, that was very helpful. Thank you. We also have one more question regarding the last couple of slides that you covered. Why did you choose to join the databases instead of appending them? Is one function better for certain types of data?
That's a great question. That's two diametrically different functions. In idea speak, okay, joining means I'm going to take a key value from one or more data sets, and based on that key value, I'm going to add data to a secondary database. So like you saw, I said my MCC, or my MC code was my key value. That key value was what I joined the data sets on, and I only added data from the second data set to the first. Now in idea speak, appending means I'm going to stack data sets on top of each other. Example, I max out my Excel spreadsheet for January, and then February and March and April and May, all the way through December. So I've got 12 worksheets in a single workbook, and I need to do full population analysis. With an idea, import all 12 sheets and then use the append function to put all 12 into a single database. So join means put them sideways, append means stack them on top of each other. And there's some characteristics that have to be maintained for the append. If you want them to be one data set, the columns have to be the same. January, and then the columns within the set. February, columns in the set. Otherwise, you get blanks with appended columns at the end of the data set. Did that answer the question?
I believe it does. We had another one just come through. Would you like for me to hold the question, or do you want to go ahead and answer it?
Well, let me grab, I think I only have one or two slides left, and then let's go ahead and jump to those questions at the very end, okay? All right, let me see here. Now people ask me this all the time also when I'm doing presentation. This is super simple, and Excel has a couple of functions, and actually a quite extensive array of functions that you can use in order to get the data. But the thing is like if I go to this May P-card information, there's 15,000 rows of data, and if I do a summary on it, it's going to put it at the very end of the data set. Okay, so let's see. If I get down here and I do Control End, it's going to go to the very end of the data set. That's a long ways down to look for a piece of information. So go down there, and I can add that up by doing a simple, let me see, where is it? An auto sum. Okay, so put your cursor on a dollar column. Let's see, where's a good one? Right here. Right there, and do auto sum, and it's going to add up that column for you. If you highlight 3 columns, it's going to auto sum all 3 columns. But what are the other statistics that you can glean from that information? Well, the way that you would do that is you would do a separate summation for all kinds of different analytics, like the average. There's more functions in here that you can do, such as standard deviations and whatnot. But it's not quite as expensive as just a plain old simple field statistics in idea. So if I wanted a sum on each column, I could put my mouse right there and do an auto sum, and it's going to add up that number for me. Very quick, one column at a time. Okay, so let's see the difference in idea. This again is plain vanilla, very simple. I'm going to jump over and pull up idea. I've imported my data set. I haven't done anything other than some simple manipulations, and I've made other data sets. All of you know that if you want to do a control total on the amount, you can very simply click on control total. It lets you pick the number column that you're interested in. It'll add that value up and put the dollar value right there. Great for reconciling back against the source, okay? I got this Excel spreadsheet. Down at the bottom of it, it said that it was summed up and it had this many dollars. Yep, I match. I'm looking at 100% of the population. I'm feeling pretty confident. I can go through and change that. If I want to do the credit, I can change it. But an easier way to do it is to go over here, import your data, and just click on Field Statistics. So in Field Statistics, every numeric column, whether it makes sense or not, gets added up. Okay? So all you got to do is go over here, click them off, and say, you know what, I really only need the amount, the credit, and the debit. Maybe the payment amount too. And it'll start populating your statistical information. Now, on top of just control totals, it gives you a whole bunch of cool things that you can start getting that head feeling about. Get your gut feeling about, does this data match what I need it to match? Does it make sense for the analysis that I'm doing? Is it typical of the period over period analysis that I'm doing? So you got net value, absolute value, number of records, positive, negative values, number of data errors. Maybe a control got turned off. Somebody entered, maybe somebody just fell asleep, banged their head on the keyboard, and typed a couple of question marks in the amount column. That show up as an error in IDEA, which is a great thing. You can drill down to it. Minimum and maximum value, and that goes to the exact record in the data set without having to do anything except click on it. You all know that if it's a blue value, it's a drill down. It's an action item. And it even does some standard deviation, population deviation, and bell curve analysis by dollar value. So this is much simpler, much more robust, and on top of that, there's 3 key types of data that's summarized up for you. Every date gets summarized. If you're pulling time columns, a lot of large ERP systems or relational databases will timestamp a transaction when it happens. So if you want to find out everything that happened before 6 a.m., IDEA automatically rolls that stuff up for you. Okay, so there we go. Subtotals, auto summing, absolutely doable in Excel, just not quite as fast as doing it in IDEA. All right, let me jump back over and open this PowerPoint back up and go to the next slide. And we're ready for polling question number 3.
All right, polling question number 3. We've got it launched now. We'll give everyone a moment to get their votes in, but please select passport from the options below.
Man, you choose hard questions.
I know, I was trying to get, put them up against a wall today.
Good thing I didn't make the questions up. We'd still be here.
We've got the percentage of voters that is consistent with the other 2 questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll now.
Okay. All right, so we got one more test that we're going to attempt here. And again, this is every time. Summarizing data. You can do that in Excel. There's a few ways to do it. I think they call it a subtotal. It doesn't do it as nice or as pretty. You can do pivot tables, but you can do those in IDEA too. I just happen to like to use summarize because it creates a new database for you, and you can choose a whole bunch of different items, and it's darn fast. I know the pivot tables are very fast in Excel, but the subtotal, which gives you a very similar effect as the summarizing inside of IDEA, is very slow. And I'm going to show you that. There's a simple subtotal box. I did a small record set of data, 14,000 rows, the one we've been working on, and it literally took 2 minutes and 20 seconds to apply all of the subtotals by the single item that I chose. Okay? So we're going to do a little test against a 500,000 record set row of data in IDEA, which took a little bit less than 4 seconds. I'm not going to do this one. We don't have time to waste. But I'm going to show you how quick 500,000 rows, and I'm going to choose more than one item to subtotal on. Okay? So let me go ahead and pull up Excel. And just for grins, I'm going to show you what you would do. I think this is my very small record set, my sample, 73 records. If I was to want to summarize this data up, I go to Data, and there's a subtotal function. Okay? When you click on subtotal, you get minimal amounts of things that you can actually subtotal on. You get to choose one item. So I'm going to have this subtotal on the MCC. I could do it by credit card number. I can do it by any value in the data set. And I get a few things that I can have it calculate up on the items that I choose to summarize. So we're going to sum the, I don't want the posted date, but we're going to actually choose the amount, the debit, and the credit, and click OK. So right there, that's pretty darn quick. I'm telling you, I'm not going to show you the 14,000 records because it literally, I timed it. It took 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And this is fairly useful. I get a grand total, I get a first level, and then I can go down to a third level, and I can individually summarize them up, and the data is displayed not too bad. Okay. What I don't like is that this is actually my source data. If I was to mess it up by accidentally typing something over the top of a value, I have literally messed up my source. Okay. So I'm going to go over here and remove all the subtotals. Okay. So let's do the same thing. Summarizing data in IDEA is very powerful because what it does is it creates a database of the rolled up data that is then very, very nice for being able to join to another data set and get much more robust data sets. Close this down. I'm going to pull IDEA back up over here. And now I've got this big data set. So let me close this one. I'm going to do the 500,000 rows. Well, 492,000. Okay, so that's a lot of data. If you jump over to the Analysis tab, click Summarization, you can choose up to 8 various items to be able to summarize on. Okay, so if I summarize on the MCC, actually let's do that. Let's leave it by the last 4 digits and then the type of merchant that they chose, and then let's actually do the purchase date also. So I'm doing 3 levels of complexity here, and I also still want to do the debit, the credit, and the amount. Give me the subtotals on those guys. We get to name this thing so we can have its own unique database, sum of P-card. I'll just leave it like that. I can add in some other analytics over here, but lastly, all I want to do is click on it and have it walk through the 500,000 records in about 4 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. I've got the last 4 digits of the credit card, the MCC designator, and the purchase date, and how many times each one of those things happened. Again, blue values are drill downs. I can look into 500,000 rows and pull the exact records out and then save those if I need to. Excel doesn't give you this possibility, doesn't give you the ability to do that, and I have a complete history of everything that I've done. You guys, a lot of the people on the phone, a lot of the people I deal with are internal audit, external audit, CFEs, whatnot, and the paper trail is huge. IDEA does it for you by default. Excel doesn't give you a paper trail. It's up to you to write it down and keep a track of it. Go back to the data. If you want to redo this summary, just click Rerun. Add another parameter into it. Change up a piece of information you want summarized. Give it a new name and run it again. You'll get a second summary, new set of data, new view of the data, all with drill downs that go right back to the original data set. All right, so that's the last key piece of information that I think I'm going to do. And now we're ready for those questions. Kelly?
Okay, wonderful. We just have a couple. You've answered so many already. Can you cover how to append a column or a row with just simple text on it?
Append?
Yes, a column or row.
So, okay, so let me go over here and do this. I'm going to open up this data set. If I'm going to append a row, maybe I want to append category and description together. Is that what, get a quick yes or no, is that what they're talking about?
I haven't gotten a response. Yes, that is what she's talking about.
Okay, so what I would do is I would right click and say append a field. Okay, there's another way you can double click, bring up field manipulation, and append a field. Okay, but for this description, I want to put the new column right here. So I'm going to right click and append a field, and we're going to give it new description as the name of the field. Now I want to choose the type of data. For this particular one, I'm going to use virtual character. If you look in the list, there's virtual, editable, multi-state, and hard-coded. Virtual lets me make an equation, and if I mess it up, I can go back in and fix it. So I'm going to leave it as a virtual, and we're going to put a length of 25 characters. Okay? The next thing you do is click on this little calculator button. It brings up an equation editor. Now, to concatenate or to append 2 columns together is pretty darn simple in IDEA. I say I want to take the category, double click on it, plus the description. And this is always very cool. So if you have an equation up here, no matter how complex it is, if you evaluate it, it says I'm going to look at row number 1 and give you the answer to your equation right there. And then you can step through and see if you're getting the answer that you expect. Okay? Once you're happy, maybe I want to separate this. I'll do a comma, a quote, and then a plus again. And now if I evaluate it, I've got a space between my data. Click OK. OK one more time, and I've got me a new column. That's how you append a column in IDEA.
Okay.
Hopefully that helped. And
let's see, we've had a couple more questions filter in here, Scott. One being, I've used the use fields from first occurrence. Will you please provide a brief explanation of that function?
Say that question one more time, Kelly.
The use fields from first occurrence function within IDEA, could you provide a brief explanation of that?
Okay, let me go over here.
It was with regard to summarization.
Okay. All right, summarization. And let me find that. Let's see. Quick summary, create database, include percentage outdates, use fields from okay. That's just talking about the records in the data set. From first occurrence, use fields from last occurrence is going this direction or it's going that direction. First time it gets to this value, it's going to start there and start summarizing the data up. Best thing to do, click on help and it'll identify those, but that's just order of operation.
Okay, great. Is there a way to circumvent the fact that join only shows you one line if one data set has multiple?
Yeah, you can do that, and it's called Visual Connector. Okay, so let me do this. If I was to put P-card, you know what, I don't know if we have time to do this, but let me just very quickly show you. If you do Visual Connector, it's going to do a one-to-many. Okay, a one-to-many join says start on record number 1 in your first data set, and then using the join criteria, go to your secondary record set, and when you get to the value that matches, make a record, and then keep on going. Every time you get a match, make a record. When it gets to the end of record set number 2, it goes to record number 2 and record set number 1 and does the same darn thing. So what you want to do is called Visual Connector. Okay, Visual Connector, these are not good record sets. I'm going to very quickly, and GoToMeeting has just died on me. So hang on a second. I've got to, you're going to have to hang with me. And let me get it back going. Hold on a second. And it looks like it's going again. All right, are you seeing my screen move?
Yes.
I had just closed the data set down. Okay. Is it updating? Yeah, there we go. Okay, I know we're out of time, but I'll do this real quick just to kind of show you. All right, this is a very common issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the desktop and I'm going to import an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got one called a master list. This is it's vendors and employees. Okay, and that's a good example for this. Okay, I want to import both of them at the same time, and we're going to call it, I'm going to close this guy down and have my vendor list. And I'm sorry for going fast here, but we're going to make this work. And then I'm going to tab this down below. So if I wanted to join between vendor to employee, and every time this value matched something down here, I wanted every one of those records, I would do this. Have my vendor information or vendor data set open, go to the Analysis tab and choose Visual Connector. Okay, now Visual Connector looks more like Access or the SQL Server or Oracle relational database interface. Okay, so from my vendor list, I'm going to join to my employee list. Double click it, put it into your palette. All right. So this is not good. This is an ugly join. It's not going to be real pretty. But if I'm going to go from vendor address 1 to employee address, you left click, you drag, and you drop. Okay, so that's a one-to-many relationship inside of IDEA. unlike the join, which is a one-to-one relationship. First time you get a match, move to the next record in the first data set. This one, first time you get a match, keep on going. When you're done, go back over to this record set and go to the second record and do it all over. Okay? We'll just leave it visual connector, and I want to see the matches. When I click OK, IDEA is going to walk through it, and GoToMeeting is going to stop on me again. But you can see that there will be multiple occurrences of the data from the first record set to the second record set. That's how you do it. And by all means, call the help desk on that, and they can walk you through a visual connector join. It's very, very simple.
Okay,
any questions?
Scott, we do have one more question regarding
Okay.
searches of, okay, he says he has a list of keywords he wants to search for in a data set. What's the easiest way to quickly search for all of them in a large data set without doing multiple individual searches?
Okay, this is how I do it. If I want to do, well, there's a couple ways. There's a utility call that you can go onto the, over here into the Smart Analyzer Marketplace, and there's a word search function or word search app that you can purchase that you can have a data set, an Excel spreadsheet, and use that Excel spreadsheet to search through the whole 9 yards. And every time the word happens, it's make you know the database. That's one way to do it. Talk to your salesperson, and they can lead you down the pathway, or go to Smart Analyzer, go to the Marketplace tab, and look for crying out loud, I just forgot the name of the app. I'll think of it. The next way that I do it is I keep a notepad with a ton of words that I want to look through, and I keep it in my project. And then when I go to my data tab and I do search, I literally just paste them in here. Okay, so that's going to paste through. I can do, I think it's up to 52,000 words that I can look through into a single database, or multiple databases and multiple columns within those databases. I literally have that in one of my other projects. I have a list of keywords that I want to search. These are red flag words for anti-money laundering type testing. And I'll go through and search descriptions in every column for those typical words. So paste them in, click go, and it'll actually go through every column, every row, and every word in your list. I don't know if that answers the question, but if not, clear me up, get me going, and we'll try to answer it better.
We got a little bit of help from the audience. That app is Looping Search.
Looping Search, that's the one.
That's the one.
I just went blank. Yep, Looping Search is the app.
And then with regard to the previous question, okay, so if you paste in like that, they all have to be separated by what? Quotations, or what's the separator?
Space, just a space.
Okay.
So if I went, you know, I could do asterisk purchase or asterisk. And the or means continue looking for more words within the same string, credit, and you just do or. And if you want an and or a not, you can add, you can sprinkle those in there, and then the help will help you to identify how to format that up. But I literally have that and saved in a text file. I copy it in there, and then I'll do that analysis. There's about 120 words that I look for. Okay?
Sounds great, Scott. I think that's all of the questions. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Very good. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I do not see any other questions coming through, so I know that we are already running over on time. I think at this point we'll go ahead and stop the presentation and thank everyone for joining us.
Very good. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.